Good evening, Canterbury. Welcome to this extra edition of NewsMakers. Energy and climate change are two of the defining issues of our time, and tonight we thought we'd turn the spotlight on these issues with an extensive discussion about the government's game plan. Joining us is the Energy and Resources Minister and, of course, the Ilam MP, Gerry Brownlee. Thank you very much for joining us.
No worries, Mike. Thank you for the invitation to be here.
It's a pleasure. Now, the ministerial review on the electricity market is now open for public consultation. Your advisory group has concluded that price rises have been excessive. Would you be prepared to call a spade a shovel and say that consumers have been quite crudely ripped off?
No, I don't think that would be fair. I think, remember that all of these analyses are with the benefit of hindsight. What we have consistently said is that the price track that we've had over the last 8 years has to be flattened out, that we can accept that some prices are going to rise. That's inevitable in any sort of economy, but when they rise so steeply and so far above your annual inflation rate, then clearly you've got to do some things to stem that.
What is your definition of excessive, though? Because in other people's eyes, they would say, well, that surely means I've paid more than I needed to, or should have.
Well, remember that the word excessive is used by the Technical Advisory Group, not by me. But what I would observe is that when the price rise has been 3 times the rate of inflation over that period, then you have to say, what is the reason for that? And I think part of the reason is the structure in which we operate the electricity sector in New Zealand. So my challenge is to try and alter that so that we get off this incredibly steep price path.
What many people seem to find particularly objectionable is that the vast majority of these, to use a subjective term, rapacious power suppliers are state-owned. Do people have good reason to feel mad about that?
Well, for those viewing who actually know what the word rapacious means, you'll find that that's not actually a very subjective statement at all. But look, I can understand why people are angry. I mean, we have started the review. We campaigned actually saying that we were going to do this, simply because we do understand that. And I think one of the questions that was asked was, do you put everything back together under the old system and just accept that we've done the wrong thing? Well, that ignores the fact that under the old system we had a problem, and that was that we had, you remember 1992, the very big, massive dry year that caused a lot of problem, but you also had significant constraints in supply all around the countryside. The fact is we haven't had the lights go out since 1974, so you'd assume there's enough electricity there to meet needs. We think by, in fact, pushing some of the, when you get to that tight point, you get dry years, by pushing responsibility for the way in which the system operates in those years off the consumers, as it is at the moment, back onto the power companies, then you're likely to get a much more secure supply. And you're also likely to have, we think, a flatter price path, because there's no doubt that the Commerce Commission investigation showed that every time there's a dry year declared, you do get price spike in the subsequent years.
I'll come back to that in a moment. One other aspect to the state-owned dynamic of the power market. I have heard from several spokespeople of state-owned generators who have said quite recently, well, if the government didn't demand such substantial dividends from us, power prices may be lower. What do you think?
Well, I think they missed the point. And the point is that we've said to all state-owned enterprises, and there's 27 of them, we expect a better performance from you than has been the case at the moment. And all we're doing is saying, look, you're telling us that you've got an asset base that's worth X dollars. That asset base is owned by the taxpayer, owned by the wider New Zealand community, in fact. And they have a right to expect that their investment is going to give them a reasonable return, because the rates of return are appallingly low. Now, then you get them coming out and saying, oh, well, if you didn't take so much off us, that actually denies the reality of how most businesses operate. If price was simply the simple and only determinant of how well a business is performing, then a place like the Warehouse or Briscoe's or any of those other places would be out of business. The fact is they operate efficiently, they do have low prices, and they are well regarded by their consumers.
Should power be a business?
I think it should be. because all of the assets that are supplied into the industry are supplied from businesses. No one out there is going to say, look, New Zealand, you need a new set of equipment to get electricity across the Cook Strait cable, so we're just going to sort of like give it to you on a bit of a sweetheart deal because you're not a business. It doesn't work that way.
Now, you have referred to this conservation campaign, CAPER, that has played out in recent years. What and how is this $10 rebate idea going to be worked?
Well, let me just explain that. I haven't used the word caper. What I've said is it's extraordinary that in something like 9 years we've had 3 public conservation campaigns because of constraint in supply. We all know that if the lakes are low, then somewhere we have to get the balance of the electricity required. Well, we do have thermal assets in New Zealand, the Huntly assets, the various gas stations throughout the country, that can meet a significant chunk of that. And if we were conserving water at the start of those dry years, which didn't happen, then we may not have had those conservation campaigns. So what we're saying is, why is this happening? Well, it appears to be happening because those who have the big hydro assets also have very large customer bases. And they're saying, well, heck, we can't meet our customer base from our own supply. So we're going to have to buy at some point on the spot market. That will be expensive. We're going to suffer some big losses. So why don't we just go and convince the Minister of Energy that things are really tight and we have to have a conservation campaign. And that way we'll be insulated against the worst effects.
And that's
what's been happening. You can call it a caper. For example, last year, the taxpayer stumped up with $90 million to put fuel into the Whirinaki reserve station, and then the government put a cap on the spot price. So those who are exposed totally exonerated for any poor business dealings that they'd done prior to that, and the consumers paid. So we've said, all right, you want to come in and convince the Minister of Energy that there is a need for a conservation campaign, and that's accepted, then the moment that happens, 2 things will be triggered. One is, as we ask the nation to save electricity, there will be upwards of a $10 rebate per week measured against those savings. Second, we're putting in a floor price on the spot market of initially $500, and if we get to blackouts, it's going to be $1,000. So the incentive then...
It puts the onus back on them, doesn't it?
They're going to say, we do not want that because that's going to burn us very badly.
Yep.
You know, you could have had swap contracts, effectively, hedges, between Meridian and Genesis for each of the last 10 years. Never been one. And,
right.
you know, short of legislating that, we're saying here is an opportunity for you to come up with some commercial solutions.
Very quickly, I've got to go to the break, but do you believe the power industry has manufactured a perception that our system is more crisis prone than it actually is?
I don't want to make that comment.
Why not?
Because I don't want to make that comment. I think I've got to work with these people over the next couple of months for the better of the consumer, and I think it's no good looking back too far. We've got a set of recommendations about where to from here, and I want them to engage constructively on making those work.
All right, we'll be back with more questions for Minister Brownlee very shortly. Do stay with us.